Ed, thanks for the time, man. Appreciate you coming on.
I'm so glad to be here.
I just kind of want to jump in because we were talking about your podcast, but I am fascinated with prohibition in general. I know you just did an episode on that. And to me, I've spent a lot of time just reading about how ridiculous prohibition was and the fact that it was 13 years and it's really the only amendment to ever be created and then turned back against itself. Just prohibition itself blows my mind. Whenever you finished or while you're learning about prohibition and even how organized crime really thrived and came about a lot because of prohibition. Like what did you take away from like leadership from back in like the 20s and 30s at this time?
That's a great question. I mean, I think that the mistakes of the Prohibition era are so instructive throughout up to the present. Like we're seeing decision making and leadership that we always need to be questioning, and some of these really draconian in like huge sweeping measures like prohibition, we should always be questioning: is this really in the public interest? You know, of course, drinking in excess is problematic, but like, is banning alcohol the answer? Leadership during Prohibition was a little flawed. And what's really crazy is in our season, actually the whole season is dedicated to this story. And it's not just Prohibition itself. It's a story underneath Prohibition about how the government also, in trying to deter people from drinking, was adding poison to the alcohol supply, which wound up killing thousands of people.
Yeah.
And this is like more just insane government activity. And it's a wild story. It's darkly funny. And we have a lot of fun with it.
Well, I also feel like, as they say, if you don't learn history, you'll make the same mistakes in the future. And again, not to just harp on prohibition, but I've been fascinated with it forever. The idea of you could pass these sweeping laws but not actually have the people to enforce it. Like they did not have the proper amount of police or whomever to police the prohibition. And the fact that all of the politicians were also still drinking. They were basically part of the corruption. Even if they weren't making money off of it, they were still involved in not pushing the police that we didn't even have to police it. So, but
hold on.
Yes.
Are you implying that people in Congress are hypocrites?
You know, I think I am. I do.
How dare you?
It's very similar to, and again, why I'm so fascinated is the fact that our Congress now can trade, buy stocks, and we've seen them. We've seen it's wild how just so happens they're on these committees and all of a sudden. They sold all their stock and it bottomed out 3 days later. I mean, there's some very familiar themes with what you guys are doing and then what the whole theme of the show is.
It's why I love the show. You're right on the money. It's we're in season 3 of this podcast, and each season is a deep dive into one of history's biggest screw ups, and they're all instructive. Like the lessons of these things are just always timely. And everything resonates. Season 1 is about a NATO military exercise in 1983 that scared the Soviets so badly they thought that NATO was going to attack. So they ramped up their nuclear posture. We clocked that, ramped up our nuclear posture. And a lot of historians now believe that it's the closest we came to a nuclear holocaust. And now all of a sudden, in present day, Putin is saber rattling, maybe some tactical nukes here and there. It's like these lessons are never, you can't learn them enough. We're always needing to go back and look at what happened and see how we can maybe do better. But that was in 1983. It was all classified until just a couple of years ago, so nobody really knows about that. It's the story. It's basically the identical story to the movie War Games with Matthew Broderick, and I had him on the podcast to talk about it. He'd never heard the story and was thrilled. It was a great reveal for him. But then season 2 is all about in 1971, some activists in Philadelphia thought, hey, the FBI is getting out of line. They're starting to harass people, surveil people. They're really starting to feel like some illegal intervention in public life and civil liberties. And so they didn't have any way to prove it. So they broke into the FBI, stole a bunch of files, leaked them to the Washington Post. A heroic reporter named Betty Metzger published these files and exposed J. Edgar Hoover for basically all of the criminal activity that he was engaged in. It was the beginning of his downfall. It started a congressional investigation. It's the only reason that we have any congressional oversight over the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, all the intelligence institutions. And it's a wild story. It's like Ocean's 11. These citizens staged a heist, and it's a great, and it had all these epic political ramifications. People don't know about it. It kind of got washed out because Watergate happened just a couple of years later, and that obviously is like a major thing that we all remember. But it's so, and now of course there's so many questions about how the FBI is run, and like is it too politicized? And guess what? Like, we have historical precedent to look back on. We can learn from these things. We can hopefully do better.
Yeah, I think that, again, the theme is all this stuff has happened before, but it always ends up happening again if we're not careful. And when you talk about the Cold War, we were actually talking about that on the show pretty recently. And, I mean, the Cuban Missile Crisis was probably number one, but if we're ranking like tiered almosts in the Cold War, this was probably number two. And this is when Reagan was like, screaming that Russia was the evil empire. And so not only were they doing the PR battle, like they're the bad guys, and Russia had developed the Operation Ryan, which was a system to make sure that the West didn't launch missiles. And so all this is out, and really it's like almost a PR battle gone wrong, like you said, more so than factually. Like, they weren't really planning to have a nuclear war, but they almost talked themselves into having a nuclear war.
Exactly. Oh, I love how we were going with this. And if you listen to our season one, it's really cool because, like I said, the story of season one, this NATO military exercise that scared the Soviets, it was all just declassified a couple of years ago. So nobody knew about it as it was happening. And we in the season, we overlay that with what's happening historically. We use a lot of archival audio from the time, of course, that crazy or very intense evil empire speech. Charles Schultz was going on on Ted Koppel talking about things. The Secretary of State, and now we have more context. We know what they knew through this Abel Archer story. And so we overlay it in the podcast, and you can kind of like, oh, well, because we didn't know at the time that they knew this stuff. And you hear Reagan's posture shift suddenly. And it's because, very probably because of how scary this moment was, that he sort of backs off the evil empire thing. Maybe there's some reconciliation between the Soviets and America, that we can work together and see a brighter future. And it's right after this near miss of like possible nuclear winter. And it's just why it's so fun. This is why history is so fun. It's almost like true crime. You get to revisit these things and kind of understand history in a new way. And the deeper you go, it never ends. It's so fun.
And two, it's just like when North Korea was shooting off missiles and you're tweeting at each, it just felt similar to that. Or now with Putin and what Russia's doing, and are they going to talk themselves into doing something that they regret doing, nuclear, which is almost what happened then? But because again, if we don't learn from our past, holy crap, we'll end up doing. And listen, I'm a big fan. I'm a big nerd about this stuff. It feels like you do it with a historian. I just kind of say stuff, so I think you have a lot more credibility than I do. Ed's podcast, Snafu, now in its third season. You're doing a book on this too?
Yeah, I got a book coming out in a month. It's called Snafu, The Definitive Guide to History's Greatest Screw-Ups, and it's also really fun, deeply researched, but kind of a cheeky take on a lot of these disasters starting from the 50s and up to the present.
You are a bluegrass musician. I know that from watching On The Office, and we're in Nashville, so a lot of bluegrass here. Did you ever like come to Nashville and do your thing playing music?
Oh, I love Nashville. My mom is from Nashville. I grew up in Atlanta, and my cousins all were in Nashville. I was in there. I was up there all the time as a kid. And then as a bluegrass fan, just always, yes, the Station Inn, so I just have so many friends that live there still, and it's one of my favorite cities.
Where'd the banjo come from? Who taught you how to play? Why a banjo?
I was really into bluegrass guitar as a kid, and my teacher was I had this wonderful teacher, Sam Worley, in Atlanta. And he also had a bunch of banjos around his studio, and I was like, I want to do that. I want to learn that, but I couldn't afford a banjo, so he lent me one and started teaching me. And it was so now I'm kind of both. I'm a guitar and banjo player, but yeah, sometimes I fantasize about living in Nashville. I love it so much. It's such a beautiful city.
If people see you walking down the road, what do they yell at you most?
Nard dog.
And what is your response to Nard dog?
I don't know. Usually just a high five or a wave or whatever. People will yell. It's funny. This woman came up to me once in the airport. She goes, I just want to give you. She's like, hey, Nard dog. Oh my gosh, I just want to give you a big hug. Is that okay? Is that okay? Or no, she said, do you mind? And I said, yes, meaning, yeah, I kind of mind. I don't need a hug from a complete stranger. But she took it as, yes, go for it. She came in and just gave me this big bear hug. And I was like, okay. I mean, at least it's positive energy. I don't need hugs from strangers. I'm not that needy, but her energy was great. It was really funny.
I was watching White Lotus season 2, and the guy who plays Plop on The Office.
Oh yeah,
I feel like he very much is channeling from your character whenever you had to go into what is it when you get angry? What you have to go after you punch the wall? What's that called when you get angry and you have to go to class?
Oh, anger management.
Anger management. Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of his character was anger management from The Office. Have you seen him play that character at all?
Yeah, you're talking about Jake Lacey,
yes,
who played Plop on The Office, and then was so great on White Lotus. I think he was wearing a Cornell hat.
He was. He absolutely was.
Right? It was so great. Yeah, there were some echoes of Andy Bernard in that performance. But Jake is so awesome. He really brought so much to the White Lotus too.
I want to ask a hangover question. The tooth on The Hangover, was that a real situation? Did you really remove a tooth that had been like a fake tooth as a kid?
Yeah, so I actually was born without that tooth. I had a baby tooth there, but when it fell out, there was no adult tooth that came in. So for years as a kid, I had a flipper with a tooth on it. And then when I was 17 or so, I got a permanent implant. But an implant is just basically a post with a cap on it. So when Todd, the director of The Hangover, was like, hey, yeah, you're going to lose a tooth in this movie, I went to my dentist and I was like, is there any way to take this thing off? And he goes, yeah, sure. We'll just take it off for the run of the movie. I'll give you a flipper so you can do the scenes where you have a tooth, and then you won't have a tooth whenever you want. And that's what I did.
Ed Helms on with us. He co-hosts a podcast called Snafu, which dives into real-life historical screw-ups and blunders. It's also funny. It's very insightful. As you can tell, I'm super into history and blunders because I think we can learn a lot from them and not do them again. Ed, big fan of all of your work throughout the year from The Daily Show until now and even the podcast. So good luck with the book and the podcast, and we really appreciate the time.
I'm so grateful. Thanks so much for having me on, Bobby, and high five to you for your history nerddom. I love it. We got to talk more.
High five to me. I'll accept it. All right, Ed, good to see you, buddy.
You too. Cheers.